Crimea's return. Our guests are Olga Skrypnyk, chairman of the Almenda Civic Education Center, Andriy Shchekun, head of the Crimean Center of Business and Cultural Cooperation, Ukrainian House, and Sergiy Mokrenyuk, lawyer, representative of Euromaidan-Crimea. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues, friends, journalists. I am Andriy Shchekun. I am from the Crimean Center of Business and Cultural Cooperation, Ukrainian House, and we together represent the Coordination Council of Organizations of the IDPs from Crimea. 15 organizations, Crimean organizations that were registered in mainland Ukraine. They formed this union in 2014, and they organized 2 Ukrainian congresses of Crimeans. This year we are planning to have the 3rd Congress. That is a few words about the activities of our union. The topic of the press conference is the new government, time of Crimea's return. Why we initiated this press conference today? We know that today there is a new ministry on occupational territories created, and that's time when the state finally heard the public. This initiative of setting up this ministry was suggested by us back in 2015, and that is when in the Verkhovna Rada in July last year we had the first roundtable dedicated to the issues related to creating the special ministry. We even initiated the draft law on setting up such a ministry, but unfortunately we did it wrong, and we on the 17th of July the state service on Crimea and Sevastopol was created, so we can talk today that these actions were wrong. When this civil service was created, we criticized the activities of this service as non-efficient. We had also we were criticizing the provisions, and we initiated the process of setting up the public council at this civil service. We lost a lot of time, wasted a lot of time. And the issue of efficiency or non-efficiency, that is what Olga Skrypnyk will talk about. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues, esteemed journalists. I am Olga Skrypnyk. I'm from Crimea, but I cannot go back home. Today I represent 2 organizations, the Crimean advocacy group. We are working on human rights and also on problems of people who reside in the occupied peninsula. For us, the activity of the governmental bodies of Ukraine is very important, because Ukraine is the guarantor of constitutional rights. I also represent Almenda organization, and that is organization from Yalta. It moved to Kiev, and we work on the issues related to rights for education to those people in Crimea who want to continue their education on the territory which is under the control of Ukraine. Talking about the former government, the government of Yatsenyuk, we have many questions to them. All the decisions of the Cabinet of Ministers on Crimea were non-efficient, and they were directed towards breaking the ties of mainland Ukraine with Crimean Peninsula. and that contradicts the constitution of Ukraine and contradicts the law of Ukraine on protection of rights and freedoms of temporarily occupied territories. And these are the resolutions on the procedure of entering the territory of Ukraine that limited the traveling of the citizens of Ukraine under 18 years of age. Also talking about foreigners, this procedure does not take into account the need of our citizens in Ukraine for lawyers' assistance. Only Russian lawyers can provide such assistance. And another resolution 1035, which was adopted in the end of the term of that government, limited not just the crossing of goods. Now this is a very short list. You cannot bring even personal things. If you want to leave Crimea, you want to move to the territory which is under the control of Ukraine, you will not be able to take out all your property. The procedure was launched that had to change that procedure, but now the new government was formed, and now the ministry is responsible for that. Creation of the Ministry on Occupied Territories and IDPs is very important, because that means that after 2 years this issue will be will mean different opportunities, and we have a specific proposal on that. We're ready to cooperate and to work together. The first thing is which concerns the status of non-resident. This is which will cancel, maybe the law, change the law. We will no longer have this status of non-resident. This should be cancelled, or amendment should be introduced into Resolution 1035. From the NGOs and from our colleagues from Ukrainian Helsinki group, we suggested our project, and we will submit it to the new ministry also to introduce amendments to the procedure of entry and exit. And it is important that the ministry can become the uniting platform, and the main topic of the uniting platform is developing of the strategy of reintegration. So we are suggesting that the ministry should launch this platform so that the professional community can create the strategy of reintegration of Crimea to mainland Ukraine, which will address all the issues related to discrimination of citizens who reside in Crimea.
На питання освіти, оскільки на сьогодні
And we need to pay attention to education, because the government has not developed the documents related to education. There's no procedure according to which you can provide accommodation and other things to a child. And another thing is so-called administrative border, which should become open doors for our citizens who stay in Crimea. It shouldn't be the obstacle. There should be cooperation with the Ministry of Regional Construction and other ministries, and the Ministry on Occupied Territory can exercise this function and improve the administrative border, so that people cannot just come to the territory of Ukraine, so that they can see that here they will be protected. Thank you.
I'm giving the microphone to my colleague Sergiy Mokrenyuk. Thank you very much. I'm Mokrenyuk Sergiy. I'm a leader of the Euromaidan-Crimea NGO. My colleagues had mentioned specific problems which we believe exist inside the general problem related to the occupation of Crimea. And to sum up briefly, we believe that one of the reasons why those sub-problems became so acute today, so topical today, is non-transparent appointment of government officials into positions to the bodies which are responsible for the Crimean policy. Neither of the bodies which were established and had to develop the policy in respect of occupied Crimea acted in favor of the Crimean citizens. And another side of this coin is the closed character of the activities of those bodies. As of today, we have the reasons to believe that the government pursues different path. We try to change this approach. During the last 2 years, it became rather clear what NGOs exist who in favor of Crimean residents or in favor of IDPs who try to assist in developing state policy, who try to provide real assistance in this issue. And we have got some developments, but neither of state bodies showed readiness to act in this direction. So we believe that the activities of the ministry, newly established ministry on the occupied territories, should from the very beginning carry out its work very openly, based on public discussions and with involvement of broad public. Thus, the government will gain trust on behalf of Ukrainian citizens. We raised this issue several times during our meetings with those NGOs which deal with Crimean issues. We believe that as of today, NGOs have the opportunity and are ready to cooperate with the state on these matters. We are ready to cooperate at the level of document development. We are ready to cooperate at the level of the implementation of those documents. But for us, it is very important to know what approach will be taken by the state, whether this will be the approach based on openness, transparency. Then we are ready to cooperate, to work for the sake of Crimean people. That's why we suggest to organize a round table, and I hope next week we will have such a round table here in the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, where we will set forth the candidate for the Minister of the Ministry of Occupied Territories. In course of that round table, we will present our vision how this newly established ministry has to cooperate with the civil society. We expect that The minister will participate in this roundtable. We invite representatives of the presidential administration and all those government bodies which believe that the issue of Crimean policy is important for them. We invite everybody to work and cooperate openly and transparently. Thank you very much for your presentation, and now it's time for Q&A session. Please mention who you are. Levchenko Semen, newspaper Час и Время Украины. My question is that you stated that Ukraine prohibits to transport the personal belongings of people from Crimea to Ukraine. In Ukraine now, there is no free residential areas available for residential premises available for IDPs from Crimea. The only way out for people is to either to get Russian passport and to lease their their houses in Crimea and to come to live in mainland Ukraine. I do not understand your question, frankly speaking. You see here people who relocated to mainland Ukraine. We did not come to Ukraine just to live on welfare payments. We came here to continue our life. For example, if you are a musician, you are prohibited to transport your piano, for example, from Crimea to, or your violin from Crimea to Ukraine, and thus you cannot continue your professional career. But with when we speak about very strict rules about crossing the border with Crimea, this is the problem because we have open border with eastern territories. Thus, we should not keep these doors closed for those Crimean residents who wish to relocate to mainland Ukraine. And also, we have the problem of relocation of Ukrainian higher educational institutions which left in Crimea. Of course, we cannot resolve all the issues related to Crimea because of the conflict with the Russian Federation in Donbass, but we can think about creating new jobs, about attracting new labor force to mainland Ukraine. Maybe some Crimeans will not get accommodation in Kiev because it's not available, but they should be able to relocate with all their belongings, like TV set, like some household amenities, etc. The question is about new ministry. Do you know about the structure, about the functions, the membership of the ministry? Thank you for the question. This is a question about the ministry itself. We are not employees of the ministry. and we do not know what's going on in the ministry, we can answer what we wish to see. As of today, we know that there is a minister who is leading this ministry. Also, we have our own vision what the ministry should do, but as for the structure of the ministry, we're not very sure about the number of staff and etc. That's a good question. As of today, the provisions of on the ministry is not approved yet. The personnel structure is not developed yet. We participated in a discussion devoted to the future structure of the ministry, where it was suggested to separate the responsibilities of the ministry into two parts, into the Crimean problems, Donbass problems, and the set of issues related to IDPs. As far as I know, the ministry had drafted the vision of its structure and drafted the provisions on the ministry's activities, and then forwarded this draft document to coordination with other central executive bodies. Quite clearly, we understand that the final decision will be taken by the cabinet of ministers, and we will see what they will finally adopt. Vladislav Malusky, head of the IDPs Association, as a civil activist, you mentioned about negative activities of state agency on the rehabilitation of Donbass and some other organizations. I think that you're right saying that much time was wasted, but if the ministry continues to work in this useless direction, what you will do to improve the situation for the better? And the second question is that the ministry has to implement the public policy towards these occupied territories, which is not defined yet. So my question, what did you do to appeal to the higher state bodies in order to make incentives for them to develop such a policy?
I will answer this question. Thank you, Vladislav. First part, as to negative activity or no activity of the bodies that existed. Olga said that we have every decision of the government, both on personnel and on powers. We remember the names of all those who did not participate in anything. Out of all the bodies of authorities that existed, I know about just one that was initiated by the civil service on Crimea, and that was the proposal on introducing amendments to the resolution 1035 on the procedure of crossing the administrative border. These proposals have not been considered by the government till today. As to other things, it is important for us what will be this cooperation. What will be this state policy and how it will be formed. Now we believe that the cooperation will be possible and will be useful. are you planning to cooperate with the Majlis of Crimean Tatar people? The strategic partner on the occupation of Crimea is the Majlis, and you can see that we have always been cooperating with the Majlis in times of Maidan, in times of occupation of Crimea. We have a very constructive dialogue, and the representatives of the Majlis will participate in all that. Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Sergiy. I hope to see you soon. This was the last briefing of the UCMC for today.
З'явиться на нашому